Now we're ready to begin studying the first foundational pillar of our framework, and that's spiritual energy. You know, in college, studying as a mechanical engineer, I learned a lot about energy, but not spiritual energy. First time I ran across the term spiritual energy, it didn't at first make sense to me. To me, spiritual is all built around religion and the church, and spiritual energy, that can be part of it. But I came to understand spiritual energy as being a little bit different and really, really important. When did I first learn about spiritual energy? Well, it's a little bit of a funny story about it. I had come home from work and Emily had a relatively stern look on her face and told me she wanted me to sit down and watch a video. And she told me, you might, I know how you think about Oprah, and she was right at the time, but sit down and watch this video. And she was right. I really enjoyed it. It was about a book that Tony Schwartz and Jim Lohr had written called The Power of Full Engagement. Now, you've heard me just use the term fully engaged before. So to learn the power of full engagement was intriguing and interesting. See, they talked about managing your energy, not your time. So I went out and I bought the book, and I'll be honest with you, it was one of the first books that I consumed. I didn't just read it, I consumed that book. I underlined, I wrote notes. I mean, it just really, really resonated with me. And the thing that really got me going was the concept of spiritual energy. So let's delve into the definition of spiritual energy. And let's start right with their book. I still have my copy from over 20 years ago with the yellow highlights and the notes all in the back. And they define spiritual energy as the most powerful source of motivation, perseverance, and direction. Fundamentally, spiritual energy is a unique force for action in all dimensions of our life. We define spiritual not in the religious sense, but rather in a more simple and elementary terms. The connection to a deeply held set of values and to a purpose beyond our self-interest. Let me repeat that. Spiritual energy, or spiritual, is the connection to a deeply held set of values and to a purpose beyond our self-interest. At the practical level, anything that ignites the human spirit serves to drive full engagement and to maximize performance in whatever mission we're on. So it has to do with the connection to our own personal values and to our personal mission. I would also add that it's also about a linkage from where we're at to a vision that we've created for ourselves. So there are three key elements to spiritual energy: your personal mission, your personal values, and your vision, your personal vision. So having a textbook definition is all well and good, but let me share what I got out of it, out of reading that chapter, out of understanding spiritual energy. What I took with it is that we all have something inside of us, if you will, a fire within that drives us to do what we do and to do what we do best. And if we know what that is, if we understand that fire, as a matter of fact, the caption underneath spiritual energy on the title of the chapter is He Who Has a Why to Live. If we're able to understand our why, then we're able to align all our actions and our activities, all the how we're going to do things and the what we're going to do's around that fire, around that purpose, around our personal why. Well, fast forward, Jimmy, over 15 years, and another book came out that was really interesting. The book was called Start With Why, written by Simon Sinek. And Simon talks about not just the importance of knowing your why and understanding it, both at an organizational level, but as an individual level as well. But he also shares some interesting information about it. See, it seems that when people talk about their job and different things like that, we tend to talk about what, not why we do. Even with products and how they're advertised, you tend to talk about this is what you should buy versus why. And what's really interesting was he shared what he called the golden circle. Now, the golden circle has why as our core, and then the next ring is how we do things, and the outer ring are the whats. And he says it's really easy to talk about the whats, that outer ring, but more difficult to put in words our why and our hows. And it turns out that part of that has to do with brain science. If you will, the whats really emanate and are stored in our outer part of our brain, our neocortex, and that's also where language and communication is formed. Whereas our why is more formed in the limbic part of our brain, where we don't form communication. We don't form words. It's hard to express in words at times our why. We have to work hard to be able to do that. So after I had read the book on full engagement, I started working on what was my fire within, what drove me, what was so urgent and important that it created the energy, even during difficult times, to continue on. That's what I'm talking about by spiritual energy. Now, we're going to talk about all three of the elements within there, because as we talked about before, there's your values, there's your mission, and there's your vision. And we're going to do a section on each of those and talk about how to develop each of those for ourselves and come to understand that. And I'm going to talk to you about two different ways of it, where we do it kind of intuitively or where we validate it by taking a little bit more time and effort to get our opinions validated by those that observe us. But now, because it's hard to put in words, I'd like you to see what spiritual energy can do for an individual. The individual's name is Iroquois Johnson. Never heard of him? Iroquois Johnson, better known as Inky Johnson, today, if you look him up in Wikipedia, is identified as a motivational speaker and a former American football player. Well, Inky Johnson grew up in the tougher parts of the Atlanta metropolitan area. Inky didn't have a lot of the benefits that I had. I had a loving family. We all lived together. We had a nice warm house. We never missed a meal. We weren't rich, but we were rich in love, and we had all our needs fulfilled. Inky didn't start out that way. Inky's mother and father didn't live together. He lived in a 2-bedroom house with 13 other people. Yeah, you heard me right. A 2-bedroom house with 13 other people. Inky slept on the floor most nights, and the one night a week he'd get to sleep in a bed, he had to share it with 4 or 5 of the other children. Inky became interested and passionate about sports, in particular football. Inky developed into a really good defensive back, so much so that he was recruited to play D-back for another high school. See, the high school that Inky went to, the dropout rate was greater than the graduation rate. It was a tough part of town. But Inky really wanted to stay in his original high school, but he acquiesced, moved to the better high school, but was injured early in that season. So he went back to his original high school. See, Inky was already developing that fire inside of him, that desire to get ahead. And his why was to help his mother and his grandmother and his brothers and sisters get out of that situation they were in Atlanta. Inky was recruited to play defensive back at the University of Tennessee, and upon being offered the opportunity, he immediately accepted. But the coach said, no, Inky, wait, come to Knoxville, see the university. And so he did. Came to the university, and his host, and of course his host is another football player that's showing him around town, showing him a good time, making sure he has a great visit to Knoxville. His host takes him to a fun restaurant down on the river called Calhoun's, Tennessee's best barbecue, if you will. Afterwards, they're walking outside, and the host says, well, Inky, we got plenty we can do. We can go to a basketball game. We can go to a sorority party tonight. We can go over to the area and just talk with the guys. What do you want to do? And Inky said, take me back to the Marriott, man. He goes, Inky, are you sure? And Inky said, yeah, I want to go back to my room. See, his host didn't understand. That night was going to be the first time in Inky's life that he got to sleep in a bed by himself. Inky had a why. He wanted to improve his life, his mother's life, and his family's life. And oh, by the way, the reason he went back to his high school? To show others in his high school that there was ways of getting out of that situation. See, being a University of Tennessee football fan, I could remember Inky's first year or so. He was good, but he made his mistakes, but he learned from them. His junior year, he was outstanding. He was considered a lockdown cornerback, which means his guy stayed covered. He was either able to deflect or assure that most of the balls thrown to his receiver's direction were either deflected or intercepted, or the player was tackled so hard he didn't hold on to it very often. Inky was that good. Starting his senior year, a coach comes in and says, Inky, have you heard? Inky was studying film in preparation for the California game. Inky said, what, man? He goes, have you heard? The list just came out. You're listed in the top 30 players. You're going to be drafted in the first round, man. 10 more games and you'll become a multi-millionaire. Man, that blew Inky away. And he put down the clicker and called his mother and got his grandmother and had a three-way and said, it's going to be okay. We're going to get out of there. We're not going to miss meals anymore. We're not going to have to stand on the street corner and just be grateful over the next Christmases. And in that first game against California, Inky was a lockdown cornerback, intercepting one pass and running it back 20 yards. Then came the second game. It was against Air Force. Tennessee was a huge favorite, but the game was still not fully determined in the fourth quarter, so Inky was still in the game. And his fellow teammate let a player run free that caught the ball, was running on the sideline, and Inky ran up to make the tackle. He made the tackle, but it was a head-to-head tackle, and Inky collapsed on the sidelines, unconscious. He woke up fairly quickly, and his teammates were gathered around him and says, "Get up, Inky, let's go." He said, "I can't." Inky had sustained a horrible nerve injury. When they got him to the hospital, the doctor, after seeing the x-rays, came running in and says, quick, get him to surgery. This young man's dying." He goes, "What do you mean, man? Get him to surgery." When Inky woke up, the doctor told him, "Son, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is we saved your life. The bad news is you've got nerve damage in that right shoulder. You'll never play football again." He says, "What do you mean, man? Football's what I do." That injury did conclude Inky's football career. And though it took away his physical abilities to play football, it didn't take away his why. It didn't reduce his desire to help his mother and his grandmother, his brothers and sisters, get out of that situation. And Inky took what happened to him and turned it into inspiration. I'm going to put on the downloads a few links to some of the stories Inky tells of his situation. Remember I said from Jim Lohr and Tony Schwartz's book that spiritual energy is a powerful source of our motivation, our perseverance, and our direction. So the video I really want you to watch is called Impose Your Will. You'll hear this story about Inky in Inky's words. And then I want you to ask 3 questions. Do you think Inky, despite his injury, despite the accident, is still motivated? Do you think he stayed vigilant and constant towards his purpose, towards why he's here on life? Do you think he has a direction in his life? Do you think he knows his why and makes choices to live it? Spiritual energy. That's where we're going to start. In the downloads, as I said, I'll put 3 or 4 links to Inky's story. But in addition, I want you to think a minute. I want you to make a list of no less than 5, and you can make it as many as you want to, of 5 people that you've met in your life that you know has a personal mission, that you know has that drive, has that internal fire that drives them towards what they do, that mission is the focus of their life. You know, I can think of several people that I've been fortunate to meet and to learn from. 2 are obviously Ed Foreman and Earlene Vining. You know, they've spent their life, they spent over 40 years conducting the Live Successful Life course so that others could learn and grow. And in the upcoming lessons, I'll share with you Ed's personal mission, exactly what it is and how it builds from there. Earlene Vining started out in the cotton fields of Louisiana, made her way to being an important director in her state, and later worked on a national level in our government before she helped get the Successful Life course started. She uplifts, encourages, and inspires people every day I'm around her. She's amazing. She is a model of leading and living through her mission. I can think of Paul Gustafson. Paul is an individual I met who learned about the power of a vision as he was a walk-on for Lavelle Edwards out at Brigham Young University. Lavelle Edwards had a vision of what that university could become in football, and Paul watched him talk about it the first day of practice, and then over the next few years watched it evolve into reality. See, having a vision is powerful and important, and that's one of the sections that we're going to have, one of the lessons in this area. But I want you to identify what are the 5, 10, 15 people, and then write characteristics of those individuals and see what's common. What are some of those common values that you find in the people that you know that have a high level of spiritual energy? Now, let's talk about for a minute the 4 quadrants of energy when it comes to spiritual energy. Okay? So on the positive side of things, the high positive energy is when you're living your mission, when you're doing things that are serving others and uplifting them. And the low positive is, if you will, the reflections upon and how it revitalizes you, the reflections upon what you've done and how you've helped others, and the gratitude for what you have. See, that positive cycle that we talk about? See, the high positive is when we're out there doing the activities that serve others and help them grow and develop. Using your skills and your gifts, doing things that serves others that you enjoy doing. And the low positive, well, that's the joy and appreciation, the reflection upon, isn't it great that Jeff or Joe or Susan or Mary have grown a little bit, have learned, have benefited from your skills and your activities. It's almost a self-fulfilling cycle of positive rituals. Now, what's the low side of it? What's the negative side of it? So, what might be high negative? Well, I would submit to you, it's what some people call work. It's when you're out there doing things that you don't want to be doing, that you're not passionate about, or doing things that are purely ego-driven. And the low negative is burnout, depression, despair that we have at times. So we want to stay on that high positive side for spiritual energy, of using our energy doing activities that serve and help others, and then taking the time to reflect and appreciate having the skills, having the talents, enjoying what we do that helps others. So now we'll move on to the next section, where we begin by talking about finding our why, finding our personal mission and defining it for us so that each and every one of us knows our why.